Well, good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee on the 22nd of March. No, it's not. That's the next one. On the 2nd of March 2022. My name is Peter Eccleston and I'm chairing the meeting this evening. Just before we start, we have started to live stream the meeting this evening, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting, councillors. The meeting is being web streamed and it's on the Council's public YouTube channel, and if you wish to speak during the meeting, please use the push to talk button on your microphone, and the camera will then pan in your direction for you to have a chance to put your point of view forward. And before we begin the formal agenda, then let me read out the following fire notice. There's no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm does sound, then can I ask that you make your way out of the building, down the main staircase and out to the main doors of the Town Hall, and congregate at the entrance to Caldecott Park. An officer of the Council will then give you instructions on when it's safe to return to the building. Moving on to the agenda, or just prior to the agenda, I would like to inform members this evening that the leaders of the political groups within the Council are in the process of formulating a letter to the ambassador at the Ukrainian embassy, offering our support for what's happening currently in the Ukraine, and also the mayor will be writing to the mayor of Kiev, also in support of the people of the Ukraine. And can I ask councillors if we could perhaps have a bit of an applause, please, for what's going on in the Ukraine at the moment, to show our support for them as well. Absolutely. Thank you. Right, on to the agenda. He says, right. The first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 22nd of November. You all should have a copy of the minutes, and can I have a proposer for approval, please? Do I need a proposer? Yes, I do need a proposer for approval. Or can I ask for a show of hands on approval? Those against? No. Thank you. That's sorted. Okay, item 2, apologies. Lynn, are there any apologies for this evening?
No, I have no formal apologies for tonight, Chair.
Okay. On to declarations of interest, please. I'd like to receive declarations of interest on non-pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. Are there any? Councillor Roodhouse.
Yeah, on the item in regard to emergency services, and there as a Director of Health Watch Warwickshire.
That's it, thank you very much. Councillor O'Rourke.
As a member of staff working for Southwatch NHS Foundation Trust.
Thank you. Okay, next item, pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. Any declarations? No, thank you. And notice under Section 106, Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. Thank you. Okay. Now, there was a proposal to review the member and officer working within the council. We've had a couple of meetings with officers, but it's proposed that we form I guess it's a task and finish group for that particular event or objective. There is a one-page strategy which has been appended to the agenda this evening. First and foremost, are there any comments on that particular paper? Councillor Roodhouse.
Just one really about who should be considered, or what should be considered. It's casework, and I think we need to be a bit more explicit about that when councillors are reporting casework into the organisation. Some of the tensions that can appear between officers and members strike up at that point. And if we could just make that a bit clearer, I think, in in the one-page strategy.
Okay. Just looking for the relevant part there, Councillor Roodhouse.
It's just an appendix.
Yeah, I've got the one-page strategy. Which part of the strategy that should be? You're looking for a modification to the one-page strategy to reflect what you just said, then I guess.
Well, I just wanted where it said what should be considered is that it should be about the casework and the communication between members and officers.
Right. Okay. Any other comments? Any members? Councillor O'Rourke?
Yes, Chair. My group absolutely welcomes the paper in terms of, sort of closer working relationships. And clearly, I think it's been quite challenging over the last 2 years with COVID and everything else. But I'm really glad to see, for me, on a practical basis, we see the reinstatement of sort of ward walks and multi-agency as well. Because a lot's happened over the last 2 years, and I think it's good. I mean, it's good for all of us to be out together, touching base with our residents and communities and looking at what those challenges are. And I think we're going to be in a really tricky situation over the next few years for all sorts of reasons. So I think, more now than ever, we need to be visible in our communities. Thank you.
I know that there's been a recent email from the police, for example. Now they're looking to do this walkabout now as well, which is quite important. This I guess it's a task and finish group. It doesn't need to be too large, I guess, does it? It should be fairly concise and obviously we need a number of officers in it as well.
Sorry, Chair. I think actually the officer involvement is, as well as the members, is really crucial. And it's certainly, I'm so committed to it, I will be volunteering myself. I do think that leaders should really be part of this process, if they can be, of course. So I think that's really good, but it's ensuring as well that we've got senior officer involvement as well,
I think it's certainly got senior officer backing anyway, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And those, I suppose, as well, when you think about those officers, there are some officers that will get called on a lot more than others. So I think they would be a crucial sort of to the whole process. There are things that we get more complaints about or concerns raised with us. I'm sure we're all the same. There's particular areas that sometimes, I might not deal with any of the officers, but some of the officers we deal with on a regular basis. Okay, thank you.
It's suggested that members of this task and finish group have completed their work by April, which I think is not too big an ask, I guess, for us. I think if the group is fairly tight, then that shouldn't be too much of a problem. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, I just want to hope that we get to meet in person. We need to lead from the front. We need to lead our members of staff, and we need to lead as community leaders and show that we are returning to normal, and we need to meet in person. And these should be face-to-face scrutiny meetings and not online. Life is returning to normal, and I welcome that.
Okay. Is it appropriate? Is there a recommendation for volunteers for the meeting this evening? Or would people like an opportunity to consider whether they choose to be a member of this particular task and working group? I know, Councillor O'Rourke, you've said you're happy to.
Yeah, it needs to be.
I'm going to do that as well, so I would like to for my group.
Okay, can I ask then? Can I ask if I stick an email reminder out on this? Maybe we could set a time scale on getting some nominations back. Yeah, for consideration. Is that agreed?
I've also got my...
Yeah, I'd like to move approval for the one-page strategy. I think it adequately mentions all the points, especially the point that Councillor Roodhouse made. It's on there, bullet point 4, section 3. It's on there. And it's important also that we work together, continually work together as members and officers, you know, as the staff change and as councillors change, continually reviewing this so that we can work together in harmony. That's a good word, isn't it? Because we get the various characters who want to be very, very forceful when they're saying something, and we've got those that are very, very quiet. So we've got to be able to accommodate all of those sort of characters, haven't we? So, yeah, I'd like to move approval for the one-page strategy and move forward that we actually liaise with all the other councillors and see who wants to sit on this working party. Thank you.
So you second it? Seconded by Councillor Roodhouse then. All those in favour? Against? Good. Okay, that's motion carried then. Thank you. Thanks, Aftab. Okay, we come on to the next agenda item, which is the review of the access to emergency healthcare provision in the borough. As we know, we've had a meeting with the West Midlands Ambulance Service some months ago. We expressed concerns there about the general level of service and maintaining the level of service, especially with the closure of the station at St Cross Hospital. There has been there has been a review and a one-page review as here at Scrutiny, and again I ask for any comments on this paper, which you should have all had a copy of. Councillor Roodhouse.
Thank you, Chairman. And on who shall we consult? I noticed that the West Midlands Ambulance Service are not on there, which may be something worthwhile in seeing that that's where it started from. Also, I see it's no longer than 6 months, which is fine for me. And University Hospitals, Coventry and Warwickshire are actually out at this moment, talking and surveying at the moment about their strategy for 2030. So I do think it would be worthwhile actually, when this task group, if it could be set up quite quickly, is having them in for a discussion, because I think that will broaden out some of the services that they're talking about at St Cross, and also some of the emergency healthcare provision that they're also, so it becomes slightly broader, I think, and there may be some further recommendations that are coming off that. But I think it does need to move quite quickly. The Coventry and Rugby Clinical Commissioning Group, of course, will have gone by, is it July, Maggie? So that would have disappeared by July, and it'd be the integrated care system with Daniel who's in charge of that. So I think we need to be mindful of that, and what's called Rugby Place, which will then be sitting in there. So we may have to talk to somebody at the County Council as well around the services in relation to what's going on that. But I think it'll have to move quite quickly and be fleet of foot over the next few months, because there's quite a lot of changes coming on down the line.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Roodhouse. They do mention actually within the background that that we've met with West Midlands Ambulance Service, so that's maybe why it's been left out of this particular issue. They probably think that we've been briefed by them, but I'm sure further engagement with them is quite appropriate. Councillor Rock.
Yeah, Councillor Roodhouse is absolutely right. I mean, things are changing very quickly across Coventry and Warwickshire, and, you know, the focus on place-based care. The thing is, I mean, we asked the West Midlands Ambulance Service to come and see us because of the horrendous waiting times that we've all heard about, know somebody that's, you know, been part of that. And what we got told, to be honest, it was no surprise to me, and I'm sure it was no surprise to Councillor Roodhouse either, that the waits are bad. And one of the reasons that the waits are bad are that there's not enough beds, you know, because there's people in beds that they want to get out of hospital, but they can't get out of hospital because they haven't got the right packages in place. So I think that, you know, with this integrated approach now, they're supposed to be working far closer, health and sort of local government. I think it's really crucial that Warwickshire County Council are part of that process as well. Because, you know, we're never going to find a solution if all the partners don't work together to find that solution, if I'm being honest with you. And another crucial thing that we're seeing already in health, these sort of numbers of people presenting with serious mental health problems in the acute sector, not just, you know, the doctor's surgery, and particularly the youngsters. It's like a tsunami of sort of people. It's seriously really, really bad coming forward. And it's a concern. Well, it's a real concern, to be quite honest, particularly with, amongst the youngsters as well. And, you know, really quite worrying. And I do think we need to sort of look at all of those things, because if we had the right intervention and, you know, at the right time, a lot of this, you know, I mean, you've only got to look at it. One, if we got the right social service and social care process in place, people probably wouldn't end up in hospital in the first place. Not every time, but a lot of the time they wouldn't end up in hospital. If we got the right sort of support out in the community and you know, people were sort of getting the sort of support they need in terms of their mental health and well-being, a lot of those people probably won't end up in hospital either. And education as well. It's a huge task. So there isn't one simple little sort of magic bullet here in terms of how we sort it out. But I do think, you know, if it's going to be worth anything at all, and I did offer my help actually before, and I know Jerry did as well, in terms of widening out of who needs to be involved in that. So I don't know. I don't feel 100% happy about it because I just don't think it's going to really make a difference. And, you know, I don't want to support something if I don't think it's really going to make a difference to the people of Rugby in terms of their expectation. Well, it's not expectations, it's what they should, what they deserve, you know. So I think I really feel it needs to be widened out. I don't know what everybody else thinks, but yeah.
Thank you. Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair. Totally agree with Maggie. Especially CAMS, the waiting list, 4 years for children who've got serious mental health issues. We're experiencing children facing suicide. The risks are massive. There needs to be more support, and I definitely think they should be involved. Thank you, Maggie.
I'll take Councillor Gillius next, and then Councillor Parker, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just to make certain, confirm that certainly all the GP practices and service churches around the borough will be consulted. I don't know whether will they be consulted through UHCW or will they be consulted directly?
Good point. Good point. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, I concur with Councillor Gillias. I mean, our first point of call is to speak to the GPs and ask them why they're not seeing people in person. But who'd have thought we'd have been here after 2 years of lockdown, when we have deprived our children of every pleasure that they have in life? No wonder they are having the serious mental health problems that they are. My goodness, it is a tsunami, Councillor. It is a tsunami. What have we done in the name of protecting children when they were the very least at risk from this virus? Is horrendous and will be a stain on our society for many decades to come. And as the parent of 2 teenagers, I can tell you it is disgraceful what is happening in our schools. However, we need to make sure that we focus this review on what we need to, which is the data in front of us. So it needs to be data-led. We need to know exactly what is happening with the demographics of our borough. And we can talk broad strokes all you like, and trust me, you know I can talk broad strokes. You know I can. But we need to focus on data. What is the real picture? Because we were very lucky with the ambulance service. They were very honest. But we need numbers in front of us. I want to know how many people are being seen and why people are making the decision to access acute services instead of primary care. Because that's what's putting the pressure on our hospitals. People can't get treated, or worse, they are too scared to bother our GPs, and they are then escalating their symptoms, or their symptoms are escalating, and there is no choice but for them to access acute care through the ambulance trust, and that should never be. Our principal form of defence and public health is our GPs, and they need to step up and do what they are paid so handsomely for.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Roodhouse next, and then Councillor O'Rourke.
Thank you. I don't know what practice you use, Lisa, but my practice has been seeing patients all the way through. So, and in fact, I managed to get in there when COVID was very high. And yeah, some of the stuff they ask you to take a picture and send it in, and then they arrange the appointment. So, I think it does vary across Warwickshire, and I suppose that's the point, that in relation to GPs, the County Council does have a scrutiny committee at the moment, which is the Adults and Health one, and a task and finish group, which is actually looking at GP access at this point in time, and it started that work of getting the data and everything in together. So the danger would be duplicating everything that they're doing there as well, but it doesn't stop us actually getting the information in and having a look at that. I totally agree with Lisa in the relation about data and evidence and bringing that in, and partly I think that's why the task and finish group needs to be established quickly, and then get in probably somebody like you, HCW, because they are working through all the facts and figures and about the, what would St Cross look like at 2030 and so on and so forth. So I know it talks about emergency healthcare provision. We could use that as, the bit, but actually it will go slightly broader. And as Councillor O'Rourke has touched upon, the integrated care system, when it comes in July, and it's already, well, it's virtually in now and running, we need to take account of that, and that's where individuals from the County Council who are running particular services, we then need to look at that, which is public health, adult social care and the rest of it. But the demographics, if you like, are very clear around Rugby and elsewhere. A growing older population, dementia, all those particular elements are just going through the roof, and the rest of it. On the mental health for children in schools, this morning there was a small presentation I was at where actually a lot of money's coming in, where they're going to be putting workers into all the schools, and there are some workers in schools now, and that work is starting to go. So we can unpick that more at a task and finish group, because that's coming into, was it the Rugby Place Partnership, which Manny chairs at the same time. So I think there's a lot of information. The danger is we can just go off like that, going here, there and everywhere. Got to try and get it a bit tighter, but we can touch on those subjects as we go through them with the data. And it may mean that we have to then, another group follows on looking at that. But certainly I think that there is something about young people, mental health and the rest of it. Rugby used to be an outlier on self-harm, and it was one of the worst. Actually, that's now South Warwickshire. We've managed to shift it down a bit in Rugby with some of the work that's come in around there, but suicide is still slightly higher. We're an outlier as a county across the West Midlands and England. So, there's still issues, but I think we need to be mindful that there's a lot of work going on in those areas, and actually we can bump into that as we go through it, but we need to pull that evidence in, which is Councillor Parker's point about some of the particular points. But if we're talking about emergency healthcare provision, and if we think about the ambulance service, actually there's probably a lot of stuff we can do in communities to help and support the ambulance service as well. So hence I think it's that particular element of it.
Just before I come to Councillor O'Rourke, can I just make one point? I think the objective of this is data gathering, as Councillor Roodhouse suggested, and as you did. So I think the task and finish group really will come up with almost an informative for us at the end of the day. I don't think we're going to resolve any of the issues, but I think getting the information, getting the data in front of us is quite necessary. Councillor O'Rourke.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. The fact is, though, I mean, I chaired Adult Health and Social Care at County for several years, so I'm very, very aware of the challenges and the sort of issues around wait times for mental health have been long for, 10 years now at least that I know of, and it's constantly been recommissioned and delivered in different ways, but the wait times just don't seem to come down. but it's very similar to sort of like the wait times for GPs, the wait times for mental health services, the wait times for social care. This all impacts on the ability of our ambulance service to actually respond quickly to the awful sort of accident emergencies that they might get called to, or the heart attack or the stroke, because they're having to go out off and look after people that we should have been looking after in the first place. So there is an issue around funding here, let's make no mistake about it, which has been recognised at county, because I believe was 2% of the extra money is going to be going into social care. So, you know, I mean, I don't want to be too political about it, but there is a real issue around funding. But if we are going to be able to do anything at all and sort of make a difference, I think you're right. I think the figures that we need, a lot of those can come through University Hospital Coventry in Warwickshire, because I'll have that data, who's coming through the doors, you know, whether whether it's the suicides, whether it's mental health, whether it's, you know, older people, and the length of time it takes to get people out again because they can't get the packages in place quick enough. So there's, you know, they will be able to give us the direction, because I'm sure as well that they would really like not to have all of their beds full up with people that actually don't want to be there. And, you know, then we end up with wait time. So if there's a will to do something, we could sort it out, I think. Sorry.
That's right. I actually think there's an issue as well around emergency dental care. There's, you know, and from experience, I can say that my son, who needs some at the moment, has been quoted 2 years before he can see the person he needs to see, which, unless I'm happy to pay for it, of course. Councillor Gillies.
Yeah, I'll just give you a bit of an example of how systems work in other countries, because it would be a couple of years ago now when I had a push bike accident at the racetrack at Spa in Belgium. And I hadn't realised I'd broken some bones, but the next day I went along to the hospital, walked straight into the accident and emergency, had some x-rays taken, and by the time I got home, those x-rays had all been emailed to my doctor. You see, so I thought that was fantastic service. There was a cost to that, of course, but more recently, I went along to my own doctor's surgery in Bower Lane and Brinklow, who served me very adequately, and they got me in touch with the folks at St Cross to have a CT scan. So the CT scan took place on the 10th of February, and the details went off, obviously, to UHCW, and here we are on the 2nd of March, and I've not heard one thing. So we've got a problem there, haven't we? We've got a problem, or I might have a problem. But I'd like to move the one-page strategy as it stands, but with the proviso that we include GP surgeries as well.
Can I have a seconder for that?
I'll second that, and for the record, to be impartial, 60.3% of GP appointments were in person in January, according to latest figures from my screen. So I do always paint with a broad brush, but so 6 out of 10 are seen in person and 4 are online. But I'm happy to second that.
Okay, Councillor O'Rourke. But sorry.
So, yeah, if
Thank you.
I'm not hating on the paper.
No. Can I just take some advice from my learned friend here? A strategy is just a guideline. I thought so. I was going to say a strategy is just a guideline document, so we can widen it as wide as the task and finish group chooses to go. So,
just through you, Chair. Sorry, apologies, Councillor Roy. If I could just come in here in terms of the one-page strategy, if members are satisfied with that one-page strategy, that can be approved with the additional informative, Councillor O'Rourke, to ensure that the task and finish group take into the consideration that wider additional piece of work and that alignment in terms of the comments, as you said, in terms of Councillor Roodhouse and the work of the county.
So can we take a vote on this, please? It's all those in favour? Thank you. Carried. The next agenda item is the review of our forward work programme, and again that is appended to the agenda. We have got also we've got it's accounts. Who's the next portfolio holder? We've had a couple of changes of portfolio holders coming before us in the future as well. I think the next one, next portfolio holder coming before this committee? Derek Poole, thank you very much. Councillor Poole, I think, is coming before us, and I think he's due on the next meeting on the 22nd of March. 28th, thank you. So we've kind of been a bit lax with the number of portfolio holders that we've had to date. Hopefully we're going to tighten up on some of the commitments on that one in the near future. Are there any comments, please, on the work programme? Now, we did have an addition to the work programme which was mentioned at the last full council meeting, which was the recommendation that the short-term actions on improving the Rugby Town Centre was brought to scrutiny. That can be added to the list going forward. That was brought by Councillor Roodhouse and Councillor Sanderson, I think, at the last meeting, and recommended for this committee. Councillor New.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to item 1.2, managing housing arrears, asking about whether we should defer or remove the topic. I think it needs to be deferred till after the audit has been done so that we can look at what happens there. I don't think it should be removed from the work programme.
The comments on that point? Everybody agree that it should remain on the work programme? Anybody against it? And from a personal perspective, I think I'd like to put the objective of reviewing the internal external communications back on the list at some stage as well. I think that's something that we as a council need to review, particularly our external communications. I've had in the past in my roles as a borough council, I've had issues with parish councils who've told me that they're not getting enough information from the council. They don't know what's going on. So I think it's a good area to review, and I've got the backing of the chief executive on that one as well, executive director on that one as well. So I think that should go back on the list. Anybody here with any other issues? Councillor Ruda.
I'm just mindful that a lot of the officers are now working on brand new strategies to deal with the corporate strategies and that as well, and the leader. So I was just wondering around about November-ish, it may be worthwhile penciling something in to see where we are as a council that's developing its corporate strategy into action plans and so on and so forth going forward, so we can see that coming out. I've noticed, what's it, 28th of November, and whether that's the executive director comes along or whatever, but just spend a little time working those. I'm looking at your learned colleague to see whether if that time scale is probably about right. I believe it would be.
Yes, just through you, Chair, in terms of that suggestion, I think that is an acceptable proposal and works in terms of the timeline that we are working towards in respect of the leadership team.
I think also that we did at the beginning of this tenure of the committee that we discussed things like planning enforcement and what have you, and we're asked to hold off on those issues because those departments were going through change at the time. And I think, again, towards the end of the year, I believe that maybe they'll have had time to put those changes into place, and maybe we should stick back on our list for review. Councillor Parker.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I disagree. November's way too far down the track. We need steer now, and we need to know where this council's going. And I don't want to sit for another 9 months waiting for information. We've had 2 years of inertia, and we now need to get on with it. And the time is now. And I think that November is unacceptable. It certainly needs to be a priority for certainly the October meeting.
I think November was particularly around the strategy. That was the date for the strategy. I don't think any other dates have been penciled in or considered. So I think that's still open for discussion. Correct. So if the members want additional work items added to this list, then let's have them, and let's have some proposals in terms of dates for discussion going forward. I think that's the appropriate way to do it. Councillor.
Well, my proposal is to ask senior management team to come on the 3rd of October. If that's the only gap we've got following summer recess, then yeah, let's get them in October. I don't see the need to wait till November unless there is, unless it falls out of sync with council meetings. But I concur about the communication review, definitely, absolutely.
Are you suggesting the 3rd of October for the strategy review? I don't think it's going to be ready by then, though, is it?
Okay, so why not?
Just through you, Chair, in terms of the point that's been discussed, there is the annual invite for the executive director and the leader in terms of overall performance, and my suggestion will be that that particular discussion is held within that forum, and points around in relation to the delivery of the corporate strategy that can be discussed at that particular point in that particular meeting, and if that's acceptable to the committee, then that can be penciled in, as we said, in terms of October, November, whichever point in time that this committee feels it is acceptable to do so.
Just to clarify, Chair, there is 8 weeks between the October meeting and November, so I certainly propose that it's October. We saw the Chief Exec and our leader in September. All the months blur into one. I certainly wouldn't want to leave it till November.
You've had 2. Later in the year, I mean, we're all aware, and obviously I did do a notice motion about the sort of the fuel issues, and I am concerned about the fuel poverty and the food poverty and the rising costs. So I just wondered whether there might be something around sort of benefits and support that we might look at, later in the year, because I know it's impacting some people now, but I don't think we've seen the worst of it yet, because some of it will be coming after April. So Councillor Roothouse, have you got any ideas how we might take this forward? Because it is going to be something that's going to affect people, and you've done scrutiny a lot longer than I have. No?
I partly see it as a potential report coming into here, a bit like telling us what work the council is doing. So Michelle and others, and Act on Energy, and people say, as witnesses, you may want to invite Act on Energy in to explain what they're doing as well. I mean, it's full up for the 28th of March, isn't it, really? So, and then we've got July, and then it's October, so you're looking at July, aren't you? I think and you've got to invite people in to do some of that work as well. I don't mean, plus that. Well, I will be asking John Illingworth how the extra money for those that are not on direct debit, was it 10,000 residents or whatever, how that's gone really. At the same time, quite clearly, it looks as though energy costs are going to keep increasing. So that means inflation will start going up again, and there'll be extra pressures on food and those elements as well. So it is an area. On the energy side, as you know, there's going to be a very big question of how reliant we are on energy from elsewhere, and should we have a decentralised energy system within the country? Well, that's a whole different ball game of a question, isn't it, really? But around that. But I think getting people in, key people that are helping, probably to talk about and tell us what they're doing within there, would be, I think that would be useful. I don't know if that's the sort of thing you're thinking about. And that's what, 18th of July?
I think rising costs is a given now. You know, and my industry, for instance, the electronics industry, we're seeing delays in getting components. So therefore, that's pushing up prices of all products affected by electronic components. You know, right down to white goods and stuff. We're going to see all of those going up. You're going to see fuel going up, obviously. Transport costs are going up. It seems that you know, the whole issue is going to get worse, as you suggest, before it gets any better, I think. Councillor New, you...
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think we need to have, I think the public space protection orders are due for review shortly, and there's been quite a lot of controversy around the way some of the enforcement's been carried out, so I think that needs to be looked at fairly soon. Thank you.
Well, the situation on that is an email came out to group leaders and myself yesterday. The actual, sorry? Was last night, yeah. They were actually coming to an end. I think it's the end of this week, wasn't it? So they needed an urgent decision last night, basically, to just get an extension on those orders, because apparently if the orders were allowed to lapse, then it would take 6 months to get the orders back in place again. So they wanted to extend for a short period while we review those, and then they'll bring them to full council, I understand, within the next couple of months.
Yes, just to clarify again, Chair, and for the benefit of Councillor New, we are proposing an emergency decision to ensure that the public space protection orders remain in place. That emergency decision will be reported at next full council on the 14th of March, with the expectation that there will be a further consideration for a longer period by the autumn, by the September full council, to be considered and debated in our full council in further detail.
Sorry, can I just clarify? So does that mean we're going to do a review before then, or we're going to wait until near the end of the year before they get reviewed again, if they're due up for review now?
So, again, just in terms of the review and further extension, that will be considered at September full council. The interim 6-month period is just to ensure that the existing public space protection orders remain in place.
And that's primarily, Councillor New, because if they are allowed to lapse at the end of this week, as I said, it's going to take 6 months to put them back in place again. So, hence the emergency requirement. Councillor Roothouse.
Yes, just on that point, I think speaking with David last night as well, I think he confirmed also people have got other concerns about the public space protection orders. We've now got extra time to actually feed that in, because I think it got sparked off by some comments. Also, they've gone into the system, which has delayed it at the same time. So it does give everybody a bit more time to talk through. So when it comes back to council, hopefully it's in the right shape. Is that right?
Okay. Is that, you happy with that, Councillor? And are you happy with the...
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the explanation.
Are there any other comments on the work programme going forward?
On the annual review of member training and development, I think as new councillors we're brought into these things, but things are not really explained to us about what we're talking about. For instance, like the corporate strategy and all these things. I do think new councillors should have training on these committees.
Okay, I thought there was.
Just through you, Chair, again, thank you. In terms of training, there is training to support councillors within various areas. Scrutiny is certainly one of them. But if there are areas which councillors require further support upon, then please communicate that through your training representatives within your various political groups, and communicate that to the Democratic Services team, and we will ensure that the required support is given to councillors in respect of various decisions that they are required to make.
Any other comments from anybody? Okay, thank you very much. And we're just in time for Councillor O'Rourke. Look at that, eh? 2 minutes to spare. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending tonight. And we can stop the live streaming now. That's okay.